This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, gee.
Okay, fantastic. Right, recording is in progress. So welcome to CIPR Midlands OpenMIC event. Kathy will tell you a little bit more about what we're here for today. My name's Amy and I'm chair of CIPR Midlands. I just wanted to give you a quick heads up actually on some events we've got coming up. So this is what we're here for today, and I'll let Kathy introduce that in a second. We also next week, for those of you who are interested in the East Midlands or indeed in how various different organisations have responded to the pandemic, we've got another session next Thursday from 1 till 2, which you can sign up for on the CIPR Midlands Eventbrite or the PRCA website. And that's taking place with a panel of speakers talking about how they've responded to the pandemic and how they are thriving. We also have coming up a juggling freelance life in lockdown chat in February. So if you've enjoyed the initial interactions we've had at the start of today's session, then there will be a opportunity to have more of this kind of group chat, just peer networking, sharing thoughts, and that is also on the CIPR Midlands Eventbrite. Coming up in April, because who doesn't love a pet, we have our Pawsome PR programme. So the team at the PDSA, try getting those letters out, are going to tell us a little bit about their PR activity, but they are also going to host a pet working session. So all of those times that you have tried to keep your cat or dog away from the video camera, you can break the rules and they are more than welcome to this session. We want to see as many pets as possible. So that's coming up in April. And in between and all around spring, we've got various other masterclass events which will get announced through the CIPR website and through our Eventbrite page. We have our annual lecture at the University of Wolverhampton that launched last year on campus. Unfortunately, we cannot be on campus this year, but we will still be going ahead with the annual lecture. So we'll get some information out to you soon. And then we're very excited. We've got a Sustainability of Communications Festival coming up, hopefully in May. So we're just finalising a few of the details, but that will be a multi-event extravaganza, all themed around the sustainability goals, UN Sustainability Development Goals, and looking at the different areas and how they intersect with communications. So I know that was a whistle-stop tour of what we've got going on, but I just thought it was worth giving a little bit of a highlight to say we've got these various different events coming up. So that is enough from me selling CIPR Midlands. I am now going to hand over to Kathy to talk to you about OpenMIC and today's event.
Hi everybody. So I'm Catherine Stedman and I'm the CIPR Midlands lead for OpenMIC. And OpenMIC is our group for independent practitioners and freelancers. So we meet usually the third Thursday, but basically one Thursday a month across lunchtime, usually 12 to 1. And we're trying to mix it up because we did a survey last year, end of last year, and we found what people want, which is some of the events like we're doing today and that we did back in December, where we have speakers in and do a Q&A session. But also we'd like to back that up with sort of smaller interactive sessions where we can come in, peer-to-peer support, networking, bring your ideas, bring your problems, and we'll mull over those until everybody goes home feeling better. If nothing else, it's coffee, cake, and the same person to talk to. So this week, we're really lucky. We are really lucky because Sarah Townsend is in high demand at the moment. And not only has she come to talk to us, but she has come to talk to us for free, which is a major ask, because every time I speak to her, she seems to be doing another event and supporting something else. And she's just rushed off her feet. So Sarah has about 21 years, I think now, of freelance experience. She's started in-house copywriting. She's had her own business, predominantly copywriting, but there's a bit more, it's a little further than that, but I'm sure Sarah can tell you more. And she decided to write a book. Well, she didn't really. She decided to write a blog, and it sort of grew. And in the end, it turns into a big, wonderful, very, very pink, comes in its own pink envelope book. And it's not your golden bullets. It's not you do these 10 things and you'll be brilliantly successful and every door will open for you and it'll be perfect. It's a truth book. It tells you the nitty gritty, the pain, the gain, everything that she did to become a successful freelancer and how long it took. And her hope is that with this book, you can get to the same place quicker with less pain. Now, the book is fantastic. It's one of those, keep at the desk books, dip back into, see what's going on. And it is broken down. It does have structures. It has an introduction. It has 8 myths. But I said it's not that silver bullet, the golden bullet. It's very much the whole thing. So what I like about this compared to other business freelance books, it talks about mental health. It talks about exercise. It talks about breaking up the day and supporting it. Not as an add-on, but as an integral part, because anybody who's had a few years worth of freelancing knows that work-life balance and that cut-off line between work and play is the fuzziest line I've ever known in my whole life. And she really goes into this in detail. So today, I'm hoping the session will be quite interactive, but obviously to control the volume of noise, for your questions, as many as you want, small, silly, ridiculous, doesn't matter. No question is silly. Put it in the chat, I'll pick it up and I'll present it over to Sarah. So you can share the question with everybody or send it just to the organisers and I'll pick them all up. I do have a few of my own, I might just pop in between. And so I think that's probably an adequate introduction. I'll hand over to Sarah now and ask her just to give us a bit of background on herself and how she got to this point of ending up here talking to all of us today.
Okay, hello everybody. It's really nice to see so many of you, although I can't actually see that many. It's lovely. Thank you for the people who've left their cameras on. Yeah, so it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm not quite sure how I follow Kathy's intro because you basically told them everything that they need to know. I started my own freelance journey 21 years ago when I became pregnant with my daughter. And I wanted an alternative to going back to work full time. And my employer at the time just wasn't open to the idea of part-time working. It was 1999. It was way before businesses had to accommodate flexible working and remote working. Goodness knows how that business would have survived through what we're going through right now. But yeah, I started off my freelance career working kind of part-time while my baby was in nursery a couple of days a week. And confess, I found it really, really hard. I thought I was the perfect candidate for freelance life, but I was taken aback by just how much kind of peripheral business end of freelancing was actually involved and just how little time at the end of the week I'd look back and kind of think, well, I went freelance for the freedom and the flexibility that we all talk about. But actually, by the end of the week, I found I'd spent hardly any time doing the thing that I loved, which was the editing and the copywriting. And that was the reason that I went freelance in the first place. So 20 years down the line, fast forward, and I would say it took me, I think I say in the book, 15 years to get good at a lot of the stuff that I think I'm okay at now. And I didn't do any networking for the first 10 years of my business. There was no social media for the first however many years. So it made it kind of harder to build the communities and the connections that we all have. And yeah, basically decided to share my kind of own experience of sort of the secrets and surprises of freelance life in this book, and really to bust the myths and the things that I think people expect from freelance life with my own experience, but also with kind of practical tips in each of the myth sections. And then also quotes and mini case studies from over 100 other freelancers across all different fields. So it's got quite a lot of voices throughout the book. But one of the things that I absolutely love in terms of feedback, like Kathy said, it does focus on the softer skills as well as the kind of practical, you could try this, you know, the strategies. And a lot of people have sort of said, oh, I love this book so much, I didn't want it to end. It felt like a conversation with a trusted friend and this kind of thing. So it's got a different kind of vibe to it, I think, to most business books. But yeah, I think that's quite enough. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm sales pitching you. I'm just literally kind of here to help as many people as I possibly can.
Right. One of the things that I was interested in, because obviously I went into the book complete detail, beginning to end. You're talking about making space for yourself, and that's not just a physical space, but a mental space.
Mm.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that, please?
Yeah, good start picking up on something I don't actually remember talking about. I think probably that was to do with kind of guarding, the need to kind of guard and protect your energy and your time as a freelancer. So in terms of blocking out time for when you're looking at your week, at the start of the week, I find it helpful to plan the week, and I use Outlook, and I have chunks of time kind of booked in for when I'm doing events like this, or when I'm doing the actual copywriting work that pays the bills. But I always remember to block out time to actually work on my own business. It could have been that I was referring to. I can't think what else it could have been off the top of my head. But really,
I think it was that, and you talked about a Pomodoro technique.
Oh yeah, that's the productivity. Yeah, that I can share certainly. How the Pomodoro technique. I don't know. Quick show of hands if anybody's actually used it. No. Yeah. Okay. A couple. So it is based on those tomato-shaped kitchen timers, hence the name Pomodoro, which I think is Italian for tomato, and it's a tried and tested way to break your day into kind of manageable chunks of time, and it keeps you focused and on task. So it's a great way to kind of break your day up and try to avoid some of the distractions and the things that kind of pull you off task, like notifications, phone calls, social media. How easy is it to get lost in that kind of continuous scrolling on social? What the idea is that you set the timer for 25 minutes. I don't have a tomato-shaped timer. I use an app on my phone called Focus Keeper. There are lots and lots of Pomodoro apps out there. You set the timer for 25 minutes, and then you work completely focused on the task in hand. Then you take a 5-minute break. And the idea is that you do 4 sets of 25 minutes of focused activity. Then you take a longer break after the 4th section. So what I always recommend is that, you know what it's like when you're sitting in front of your laptop all day, you hardly move some days, and you kind of get up at the end of the day and you're like stiff and achy and you're kind of hunched over your laptop all day. So I recommend taking a breather away from your laptop in those 5-minute breaks. Go downstairs, make yourself a cup of coffee, do some stretching while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, or walk circuits of your house like I do, up and downstairs a few times, and just physically taking that space away from your laptop. It not only kind of re-energizes you because you're moving, you're avoiding that fatigue that comes with sort of sitting down all day, staring at a screen. You're avoiding those kind of headaches that you get from continual staring, and it's kind of keeping you productive. Helps also to break those kind of mental blocks. You know, when you're working on something and you can't see the wood for the trees, and you really need something to kind of shake up. Ordinarily for me, that's swimming. I try to build a swim or some exercise into my day. And when you're doing those kind of activities that put you into a flow state, that's when you tend to think clearly and come up with ideas, solve problems and that kind of thing. Does that help?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to keep moving on swiftly because I've got questions flying in at me, and I'll try and get through as many as we can in the time we have available. So Karen has asked, how did you find the freelancers to include in your book?
That's a really good question, and it was part of the important kind of thread that runs throughout the book is the importance of community. Things just like this, you have a community here at CIPR, and it's one of the most important things to recognize when you are self-employed, because of the isolation and the loneliness and kind of the lack of social contact that comes with, and let's be honest, right now this is not just affecting freelancers, this is affecting everybody. So just not having people to bounce ideas off against, and get feedback on sort of things that you're struggling with, and to ask, you know, what do you think I should charge for this project? You know, how do I deal with this difficult client? Or just to like share, you know, what you were watching on TV the last night or whatever. So it's really important to have that community around you. This is something I think that this example here is really strong, that I always say, don't see the people who do the same job as you as your competitors, see them as your community, because there's so much experience that you've all been through. You've all had your own different experiences. You can all lean on one another and support one another, and help each other, kind of just have somebody to talk to, just a sanity check. So to get back to the question, sorry, I have my own kind of freelance community, I would say predominantly on Twitter. And what I did was, initially I put out a tweet saying, to be a successful freelancer, you need to be ... and asked everybody to kind of fill in the blanks. And then when I got some really good responses from that, I thought, okay, this is going to be a really core thing to include. So I messaged those people and said, you know, would you be happy to be quoted in the book? And then some people kind of gave me a little bit above and beyond the information that I'd asked for. And I thought, well, this is great, because this makes a mini case study. So yeah, it was from my existing network, basically. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So Anna has asked, what do you mean by finding yourself not spending time on the work things you wanted to do? Back when we were talking about the Pomodoro technique, I suspect.
What do I mean by what? The stuff that distracts you, do you mean?
Yeah, I think she's asking, is that work related or non-work related? So is it a case of being distracted by being in a home environment, or is it a case of being distracted by the accountant, or the things that you have to do that aren't the core job, the things that when you go freelance, you discover you either do it all yourself, or you ask somebody else to do?
Yeah. So it can be so many things, can't it? I mean, it's really easy, I think, to get distracted by email. I personally I just think email autoresponders are not just for holidays. So I have an autoresponder set on my own email that says, thanks for getting in touch. I check my email just a couple of times a day so that I can focus on writing hardworking copy for my clients, but I'll get back to you soon. So the reason I do that is because it keeps me focused off not checking my email every 5 minutes. It manages my clients' expectations because they've got confirmation that I received their email, and it lets them know that I'll be back to them soon. So it's kind of reassuring, but at the same time, it's showing that when I'm working for them, I'm not going to be pulled off task every 5 minutes by answering emails from other clients. Personally, I don't like answering phone calls. I don't know if anybody else is with me on this, but if I get a phone call that I'm not expecting, personally, I let it go to voicemail every time. 90% of the time, it's somebody trying to sell you something anyway. And the other 10%, if somebody leaves a message, that's great, I'll get back to them. I guess there's always a tiny risk that somebody won't leave a message, but I haven't actually had that happen. And what I prefer to do is, on my own website, I use a scheduling tool. So I personally use Calendly, but there are like Acuity Scheduler and various other tools. And what I prefer to do is kind of encourage people to book a discovery call. And then when I get the email from Calendly, I get the person's email address, their phone number, their website. So kind of data capture wise, that's really practical. And then I get kind of a summary paragraph. I know what they want to talk to me about, and I can encourage people to book slots at times of day that are perhaps least productive for me on the actual work that I need to do. So that's kind of, it's all really, it comes down to taking back the control. Because when you first go self-employed, you want to be your own boss, and then we kind of forget that, and somewhere along the way our clients become mini bosses. So we've got lots of people who we're working for, potentially, who are all dictating the terms of the way we spend our time and our, you know, the whether we answer phone calls at the weekend and when we answer our emails. So it's all to do with the little steps that you can take putting your opening hours or your office hours in your email signature, for example, taking control by kind of taking back an email autoresponder, switching off your notifications so you don't get distracted during the day, or even taking social media off your phone. I hope that helps to answer the question.
Yes, very much so. And I looked at your website and I'd seen that booking tool, and I hadn't seen that many places, and it was quite useful. As you say, it's when you talk about using it in the least productive time of the day. So for instance, I know I'm great in the morning, fantastic in the evening. My afternoons are my downtime. So that's a good time for me to do phone calls.
Yeah.
I've got a few people asking similar questions next. Do you outsource any tasks?
Yes.
And therefore, I assume which ones and why? What's your rationale?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm quite outspoken about outsourcing, because I think when you first realise just how much extra stuff there is to do, because you go freelance to begin with because you have this kind of special skill that you want to share with the world and earn good money for doing, and you find that you're spending hardly any time, to kind of go back to my intro, doing that thing. So it took me flipping ages to learn to do this. I didn't outsource anything for at least 12 to 15 years, and I've only been doing this 21. So over the past like 5 years.
When you say ages, you don't mean like a couple of years.
Well, when I started outsourcing, it was such a game changer. I started by outsourcing my accounts, and I just found, oh my gosh, I mean, what I pay my accountant for is really the peace of mind to know the job's done properly. If you outsource to an accountant, they tend to give you so many tips about what you can actually offset as business costs that they save their fee in the first place. But for me, it was the headspace. I just have to look at a sheet of figures and I feel myself internally panicking because I'm such a words person. So the amount of time it saves. So what the way I think to look at it is to think of the tasks that you're doing that you don't enjoy, you're not good at, and they don't make you money. So as much time as you're spending on these tasks, if you get to the end of the week and you think, oh God, I spent 60% of my time doing admin or social media or my accounts or invoicing or whatever it is you would consider outsourcing, you're going to kind of feel a bit like it affects your self-worth. I think you kind of think, oh, this is a bit, you don't feel particularly fulfilled because you're doing tasks you're not good at half of the time, and you don't feel particularly happy in your job. So the way I look at it is to, if you're outsourcing a task to someone else, it might be a job that takes you 10 hours, but it might only take a professional 2 or 3. So as soon as you can kind of adopt this mindset of what could I outsource, that actually then you're kind of building this little super team of people who are all out there. Sometimes, in fairness, it takes a while to find the right person. If you're looking to kind of work with a VA, for example, you might need to talk to a few different people to find somebody that actually really fits with your business and has relevant experience. But once you find the right person, just being able to kind of go, oh, can you just help me out with this, whatever. It's just as quick as that. And then you can just focus on the job that pays the bills. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, very much so. So I'm just scrolling through. So when you were starting out, how do you decide how much time a task or project will take, especially when knowing whether to charge per hour, day, or by project? And to be fair, I don't think this question ever goes away. It comes up at every freelance event we ever do.
Yeah, it's the perennial question, isn't it? I now charge a project fee, and I have done for about 10 years. But to begin with, I did the whole traditional freelance model of exchanging time for money. What that does mean, and I didn't see this for such a long time, if you've only got a certain number of hours in the week that you can do billable work, and if you're only charging whatever your hourly rate is, there's never potential for that to go up unless you increase the hours that you're working. And the more hours you work, kind of the more work creeps into evenings and weekends and free time, and what should be kind of your time to focus on the other stuff that you like doing, assuming that you enjoy your job, the higher the chance of stress, overwhelm and burnout. So I've forgotten where I was going with that.
Well, the original question was how do you work out how much to charge for time, and do you do it by task, by project, by day, by hour?
Yeah, so so if you're charging a day rate or an hourly rate, you've only got potential to earn a certain amount. But actually, once you realize, so say for example, have you heard that analogy where the guy who charges £1,000 to go and fix something, and he's an electrician and he's got 20 years experience, and the guy says, oh well, why is it £1,000? It only took you 10 minutes to do the job. And he says, yeah, but it took me 10 minutes to do the job, but it took me 20 years of experience to know which wire to cut or whatever. So the value of your knowledge, your experience, the sheer time it's going to save the client, the peace of mind that they have of working with a professional who really solves a problem. So that's what we're all doing for our clients, isn't it? We're all taking away the pains, the stuff they don't like doing, the stuff they know they're not good at. So yeah, in terms of how you decide what to charge, that's a really difficult one. And from a PR perspective, I don't know, do you have benchmarks within the CIPR? Do you do like rate surveys? I imagine you do. But you need to get some form of benchmark, but you need to be comfortable, I think, to start charging a fee, a project fee, as early as you can in your freelance journey, and partly to do with it helps your own self-worth. Once you start, you know, thinking, okay, well, this is actually going to this is going to really help this client. So if I'm writing, say, a 500-word summary of what their business does, there are multiple uses for that piece of work, but it might only take me an hour. So if you're charging just an hour's rate, that's not reflecting the value that they're getting from that piece of work. I hope I didn't go off tangent too much then.
No, and it's one of those perennial questions. It's every piece of advice is useful on that particular question. And as I said, it comes up, I think, every freelance session we ever have.
I'm not surprised.
So Alison has asked, what are your top tips for gaining and winning business leads?
Oh, okay.
No, nothing like a small question.
Yeah, again, yeah, really, really big question. For me, it has to be around relationship building. So putting yourself out there. People won't hire you okay, so assuming first of all that you have a really decent website that's been well written and has been SEO optimized, so that's kind of there in the background, doing like working away for you. And in the meantime, you're putting yourself out there on social. Don't feel that pressure to be on all the channels all the time, by the way. I would say focus on a couple of platforms where your clients are most likely to be. Perhaps in your case, I guess maybe Twitter and LinkedIn rather than Facebook and Pinterest and Instagram. And sort of go about establishing yourself as an expert in your field with your posts. So be prepared to kind of be generous. Join the things like Facebook groups, Slack, thingies,
all the various options.
and put yourself out there and kind of really do think of the fact that if you keep an open mind, you might have an interaction with somebody, but you might think, oh well, they're never going to become a client. But at the end of the day, you don't know who they know. So I like that Maya Angelou quote that's people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think if you can kind of go the extra mile, put yourself out there. One thing I like doing a lot, and some of you might have experienced this, when someone connects with me on LinkedIn, I quite often like sending them a little personalized voice note just to say hi. and I think it makes you stand out. So I'm not suggesting you all start doing the same thing, but if you can find something that kind of makes you a little bit more memorable, then I think that is a good way of, then when that client hears of somebody who needs a recommendation, or they need a piece of work themselves, you're more likely to be forefront of mind, and they're more likely to recommend you.
I think that's very true. We do business with people we like.
Yeah,
People who make us feel good, people who make our life easy.
exactly. And I always say it's never important to be the best at what you do, but it is vitally important that you're not only reliable and you're going to deliver on time and on budget, but that you're someone that people enjoy working with, because then they will remember you and they'll want to work with you again.
Yeah. Right. I've got that. Okay. Do you pay people to contribute to your book?
No, I didn't pay anybody to contribute to my book. God, you're making me feel guilty now. Should I have done?
No, it was actually put slightly different. It was actually put, sorry if it's a silly question. And I said there are no silly questions, because especially depending on your level of experience, you know, how would that work? But I mean, if I would say, you know, you put that message out there and people came back to you, and it's that element of trust, isn't it? If people have contributed to your book, that has to be trustworthy, so not paid for.
Yeah, do you know what? Nobody, not one person said to me, are you going to pay me for providing a quote? To be honest, I think I'm sometimes a bit naive about generosity, because I do, like, as Kathy said, I don't get paid for doing talks like this. And I sometimes think that that's a little bit of a downfall, because it wouldn't have occurred to me to say to somebody, oh, you know, like, I'll pay to include you, because I think, as you said, it's all about being authentic. And I think if someone is being paid to say something, it's like where I've had journalists contact me and say, will you give me a quote for this article that I'm writing for Forbes, just name drop that. They don't pay, you know, you don't, it's I guess a form of exposure, which is something that I always say don't work for exposure, but I think this is a little bit different. It's about wanting to give something back to the freelance community, and if you can help someone with just a couple of lines of quote, then no. Short answer, no, I didn't pay anybody.
I suspect as well it's a different environment since the social media and influencers, where it's not always stated that they're paid, but they are paid in one form or another. So people coming up out of university in the last few years, it would be a normal cultural thing for somebody to be paid for an endorsement. Whereas you and I, being a bit old, wrinkly and in the tooth, and starting out business way before any of this happened, are used to just working on that, building a business through trust. As I think it is hard sometimes for us to realise how much the landscape has changed, and that I mean, going back to good comms, I'd say trust is paramount, authenticity is paramount.
Absolutely. And I think it's a bit of a sorry state of affairs, really, if people want to be paid for like 2 lines of advice. So I'm glad that nobody did say to me, will you pay me? Because as I say, I've got 100 in there, so I've got about 5 mini case studies and almost 100 quote, like, they're just quick, like couple of lines of advice and opinion.
So if I'm not looking directly at you, I'm just scrolling through, because there's an awful lot of things coming in the chat and I don't want to ignore anybody. I don't know if we'll get to the end.
That's quite all right. I don't have my glasses on for a reason, because otherwise I'd just be totally intimidated by the fact that there are 70 people here.
That's my job. I'll do the questions. Okay. So, from Neil, are there any tips for how best to approach new clients from scratch? Things to include in emails, LinkedIn, messages, etc., to grab attention. And he says thanks.
Thanks for saying thanks, Neil. Appreciate it. Again, I think this comes back to authenticity. I think you presumably most people here, if not everybody, is kind of their own personal brand. Not the biggest fan of that expression, but people are choosing to work with you because they know, like, and trust you. and you've obviously been doing something right for them to approach you in the first place. So I would say always stay completely true to your personal brand. If you're not like a slick, polished person, if you prefer to be a bit more casual and chatty, for example, don't pretend to be something in your brand that you're not, because that will just, it's really exhausting keeping up a pretense. So I would say, again, it took me a long time into my career to kind of realize I didn't actually have to be this kind of suit wearing, pretending to be like in charge all the time, because I'm just not that person. I can't be anything other than who I am now. So yeah, and it's kind of done me okay. So I think use your own language, show that you're really interested in their business, genuinely interested. I mean, presumably you are. And yeah, just keep it real, I think.
I've seen a lot more of that. I don't know if it's lockdown and I'm looking more, or whether during lockdown and people going into people's homes through video, the element of trust and authenticity and being real and personal branding seems to have mushroomed. It seems to become something people talk about all the time now. So
I couldn't agree more.
Could be something good that comes out of the pandemic. Right, so it's just one of those top 3 tips ones. What would your top 3 tips be for someone thinking of embarking on a freelance career? Not someone who's already in, but is thinking about it.
Do you know, I get asked that so many times, and I swear I should just have something printed out that I could just read off, because every time I think of different answers. Top 3 tips. Be prepared to invest in your business and realize that you are a business. You're not just a freelancer. I think there's too much of that kind of self-effacing, like, oh yeah, you know, I just do a bit of this for a bit of money, you know, particularly if people have kind of come to a full-time freelance career from doing a bit of a side hustle type thing. But you are unlikely to find clients who will take your business seriously if you don't take it seriously yourself. So tip number 1, adopt the mindset of a business owner. That is chapter, well, in the book, I can't remember which. Have savings behind you. That's a really big one, and not enough people warn you about the whole payment on account thing. If people just don't talk about that. So your first, I can never quite get my head around what it is, but again, it's in the book. Your first tax bill includes something like 50%, don't quote me on this, of the following tax bill, like estimated based on your estimated earnings, and it catches people out all the time. I also say that if you have like a reserve of savings, it just takes the pressure off those quiet times, because those peaks and troughs are inevitable. They're just part of the, you know, they're part of the process, aren't they? We all know that. So when you get those quiet times, instead of focusing on the, oh my gosh, I don't know where the next job's coming from, I need more clients, I need more work, those feelings of kind of fear and panic, this is going to sound a bit woo, but you know, when you kind of focus on the lack of work, you kind of get more lack. But if you keep yourself just an A4 sheet of paper with some productive, positive activities that you want to do to market your own business, to increase your own personal reach as a brand, if you've got a list of positive things that you want to do, every time you get a quiet moment, you think, great, turn it into a positive, kind of reframe it and say, now I can spend time improving my website, or defining my niche, or getting clear on who my customers are, or writing a bank of 6 blog posts that I'm going to release 1 a month for the next 6 months. And as soon as you start working on that productive activity, something happens, something weird happens. This is borne out time and time again for me. The work will start coming back in. As soon as you take the focus off the lack of work, it starts to come back in. So that's kind of 2. Third thing, buy this, because honest to God, everything is in there. So when I first started out, it was 29. I didn't have any social media groups and things to rely on, and I really wanted this advice. So when I sat down to write the book, I just wanted to share everything that 29-year-old me wanted to know back then, all the things that were likely to trip me up, because when you're equipped with the right information, you don't make the mistakes. You shortcut the hurdles and you just kind of go to being great straight away. Don't spend like 10, 12, 15 years at getting good at this stuff like I did. Wouldn't recommend it.
It's so true. And when I read it, I was sitting there thinking, oh, I remember that. I wish someone had told me that one.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to just do these questions in order because there's no chances getting to the end, I'm afraid, everybody. So any tips for maintaining productivity when you're helping kids with schoolwork and have multiple clients, work to do for them and managing them? And if not, we can always take that one into our session next month when we're going to have a peer-to-peer support group where we can be mulling that one over.
It's such a difficult one. I'm, you know, my kids are now 21 and 18. One's at uni, one's doing A levels, and they just do their own thing. And I've got friends. I have a group of fellow freelance copywriters. We're on kind of a little support group, I guess, through Twitter messages, and a lot of them have got small children and they're really, really struggling. And I don't actually feel, hands up, I really don't think that I'm probably the best person to give advice because I'm not going through that. So anything I say would feel a bit trite because I can't imagine how hard it is for anybody right now. I think it does come down to kind of setting boundaries and kind of creating some form of balance between the work time and the home time. But how you do that when you've got little ones, kind of, yeah.
I think, Lisa, if you can join us next month, because I have a 7 and a 10-year-old, so I am scarred and feeling that pain right now. And I know quite a few people that intend to be on the call next month that are in the same position. You know, I've tried to break it up by being honest with my customers and saying I'm homeschooling. To be honest, the whole country's in this position. I was on the phone to a customer yesterday, and my son knocked over a lamp and bashed his back. Excuse me 1 minute. I'm going to just check if he's bleeding. If he's not bleeding, it's just a bruise. I'll come back to you. And it's the reality of life at the moment. But I think, yeah, if we perhaps take that one out, and we'll try and deal with that one next month.
I think that honesty is it's kind of building really strong relationships between us and our clients and our colleagues, because we're all going through the same thing. And I've had a lot of clients saying, oh, can we do a call at 3:30 because I'm homeschooling until then. So a lot of my calls have been knocked back further in the day, and it's fine because we're all going through the same thing. It's not fine that we're all struggling, but yeah, everybody understands. And I think anything that can create an atmosphere or kind of an ethos of more openness is going to help our relationships with everybody.
I think it goes back to that point, you never know who's going to refer you. I've ended up having conversations with people I've not met previously about the kids and what's going on. And then they're like, oh, you do such and such. Like, yeah, I do websites, you know, and it evolves. Anyway, if I move along, because we are with this, definitely don't have enough time for all these questions. So this is from Helen. How long do you think we should be spending on business development, professional development training per week? This is something I've never seemed to find the time for, but always feel I'm letting my business down by not putting that time aside.
I don't think there's any one size fits all answer to that question. It will depend on how much time you can feasibly find in your week. Although I have to say, if you don't allocate it at the start of the week, it just won't happen. I think it's really important to physically put it in your schedule, even if you just say an hour a week, 2 hours a week, but make it a non-negotiable. So if you know, if you're kind of finding yourself, I think a lot of it is to do with the productivity thing, because I think it's really easy for time to slip away, and it's unusual for us to be kind of working completely focused 100% of the time, because that's just not how humans operate. So there are bound to be distractions, but if you can minimize the distractions in your week and kind of even just set an hour aside a week, but if you schedule it into your calendar, it's like scheduling breaks, because breaks and holidays, I know we're so restricted right now with what we can actually do, but scheduling time off, I think, is now even more important than ever, because there's that feeling of like, well, Saturday and Sunday feel like every other day because we're in lockdown. Like, well, I might as well just carry on working, but it's not good for your well-being. And as self-employed people, the only person who is going to prioritize your own well-being is you. When you're employed, you might have a mental health first aider or a representative that you can go to if you're really struggling, someone you can offload on, but we don't have that. We have to be that for ourselves. Slightly off tangent there, but connected.
It's not a straightforward one. I'm going to go one last question because I need a couple of minutes to wrap up, and I know Amy does too. This is from Sarah. She's just starting out in her PR career. She's finished her master's, but she really wants to see freelancing as her future because she has a disability. Do you think anybody can freelance, or do you think it takes a certain type of person?
I would say there are certain characteristics and traits that you may or may not have that can help along the way. There's sort of a bit of a matrixy, gritty type of thing early on in the book, and actually if anybody wants to download the free sample chapter, I'm pretty sure it's actually in there. The free sample that you can get from Amazon doesn't go as far as the myth chapters, but it does have that matrix in it, I'm pretty sure. So there are certain things that I think stand you in good stead in terms of qualities, but it's not essential to have all of them. And also by kind of being self-aware enough to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Like, for example, one thing that kept coming, two things actually that cropped up time and time again when I asked Twitter were patience and thick skin. And I couldn't be less patient or less thick-skinned if I tried, and it's not held me back, because I think as long as you're aware of what your perhaps limitations are, for starters, there are certain things that you can work on. By having that awareness, you know that, yeah, this is perhaps a bit of a trigger for you. It's something to look out for. I think the difficulty lies with if you're not at all self-aware. There are obviously characteristics like being tenacious, like having a certain amount of tenacity is really important, because you can't just, the moment a client ghosts you, that's a talk for a whole other discussion, isn't it? Like, we've all had that situation where you've had a great talk with a client on the phone or in a meeting, and then you put a couple of hours aside or whatever to put together a great proposal, read all their background stuff, and then send it out, and then tumbleweed. So you do need to have a certain amount of resilience, but for example, resilience is something that you can work on and increase, and it's like a muscle. Again, gone off a little bit off tangent there, but I do think there are certain qualities that would, or certain traits that might hold you back. Like if you were really, you weren't self-motivated at all, you do have to be disciplined and motivated and organized, I think. But most other qualities are kind of workable with, withable.
You've got to turn up to work.
That helps.
So if I could ask you, we've got time for one question. I'm just going to wrap this up. What's the takeaway? People, there's so much information coming through, so much of a discussion here. Do you want people to remember one thing, one piece of advice or one tip or one topic? What would you want people to remember when they go today?
I think this is something that we haven't necessarily touched on that much, but the fact that it's okay to have bad days is really important to recognize. And this is coming back to that thing of needing to kind of represent for ourselves, for our own mental health, and to put in place those good, strong boundaries to kind of create a better work-life balance and to get more enjoyment from self-employment. You will have days where you kind of feel like you're smashing it, you know, you're like powering through your deadlines, feel like kind of Superwoman, Superman, but you will get bad days. And that phrase, if you do a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life, has a lot to answer for, because it makes us feel guilty for having bad days. You know, I'm doing this job, what have I got to complain about? So you realize that you're not alone with that, and keep talking.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to sort of pull it together there. I'm sorry to everybody who I can see. I'm scrolling down and I'm sort of only 2/3 of the way down the chat, and I've run out of time. So I'm really sorry if there's all the people who have questions we haven't been able to answer. But bring those questions to next month, because you know, between one another we might be able to look at all these and come up with some good answers. I would like to put in final thought for the next meeting next month, Thursday, the 18th of February, 12 to 1, which happens to be half term for me, which means I can leave the chaos running in the background and not have to try to do the homeschool work, but I hope it works for the rest of you. We do have a mental health event lined up in our Freelancers group for a couple of months' time, and we are continuing to line up events for all the other topics that people said they would like us to cover when we asked them back in December. So Amy, if I could hand over to you to our Midlands piece, please.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us. Kathy, well done for hosting. Lots of questions there, and never easy to manage all of the chat. So thank you for doing that. As mentioned, so Kathy looks after our OpenMIC group, which is our independent consultants group. There is a Facebook page that you can join. And you are also welcome to get in touch with either myself or Kathy if there's anything else that we can do for you on that front. So there will be regular OpenMIC events. Kathy's hoping to coordinate those with the help of Rebecca and Nikki every month. And then we also have our wider CIPR Midlands calendar as well. So take a look on the CIPR website, the groups page for Midlands. Take a look on our Eventbrite page or follow our social media and keep an eye out for the various events. And you are more than welcome. I have had a question earlier about CPD points. I'm going to hold my hand up, and lockdown means I haven't logged all of these events on the CIPR portal yet. I will try and get it done this month so that you can do it before the deadline in February. But if not, you can custom submit. Any of the events that you attend, you can put through as a custom submission. If you need proof that you've attended, then email me and I will send something back that says, yes, I can confirm that this person attended the event.
Amy, I'll just jump in that this one should be up on the CPD list. I've worked it through with HQ, so this particular one should be up.
Cool. So thank you to everybody for joining us, and look forward to seeing you at another CIPR Midlands event in the future.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.